And there have actually been more serious things. Saving Private Ryan, some of you may have heard. I mean, that basically about a quarter to a third of the ABC affiliates who were supposed to air that program this past November on Veterans Day refrained because of the language in that movie. In other words, you're supposed to have a realistic movie about World War II and about the incredible sacrifices and bravery of those people, but you can't show people how they speak. The fact is, almost a day doesn't go by when there isn't a new thing that either the FCC or other parts of the government either are doing in violation of the First Amendment, or people think they're doing, and this chilling effect is in some ways even worse than what actually does happen. And furthermore, predictably, what begins as a seemingly, politically innocent campaign against indecency, all right, you don't want that part of the body shown on television. What's the political implication of that? Well, it doesn't seem to have political impact. But predictably, that always segues, in short order, into political censorship. This past summer, in the presidential election, among its other aspects, it was probably the most dismal time in American history for people calling for censorship on all sides. That's just about all anyone was saying. First I became aware of it is they shouldn't allow, I guess this was the FCC, maybe the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, who knows, that alphabet soup of governmental agencies. They shouldn't allow ads for Fahrenheit 9/11 on television because that basically is an anti-Bush ad and, on some kind of political McCain-Feingold. I always get a headache when I try to understand that law. That's supposedly not allowed. The other side, the Democrats weren't much better. They were going ballistic about the Swift boat ads. These were anti-Kerry ads. And I remember I had dinner with a woman early in the summer who's a pretty big advertising executive, an old friend of mine, and she was saying to me, well, I know it's against the First Amendment, but can't we do anything to prevent those scurrilous ads, from being on television? And there was a petition given to the FEC, the Federal Election Commission, that it should act to prohibit the Swift boat anti-Kerry ads from being shown on television. So much for truth and falsity, fighting it out in the marketplace of public discourse. And as a matter of fact, just in the last couple of days, we have a series of new developments. And some of these are not explicit violations of the First Amendment, but consider this. A federal district court ruled the other day that it's perfectly fine for universities and colleges to censor their newspapers. Actually, back in the 1980s, courts ruled that it was okay for high schools to censor their newspapers. Now, I admit, if somebody published an article in the RAM that was critical of me, absolutely burn it down. No, I wouldn't want to see that happen. Because no one likes to see unpleasant things, written about them or the school they're in or anything like that. But what kind of lesson does it give our college students and our high school students to say that the administrations can censor those publications? Technically, they have the right because ultimately it's a private matter. It's not censorship of a public newspaper. But what it does is it gives the lesson of John Adams, Joseph Stalin, what is sometimes called the social responsibility of the press, which holds that the obligation of the press is to support things, never to criticize things. And by the way, I don't mean to tarnish John Adams. He was no Nazi. He was no Soviet totalitarian. He was a great American, but unfortunately, he happened to have a point of view which was picked up by these totalitarians in the 20th century. As Karl Popper brilliantly shows in his book, The Open Society and Its Enemies, published in 1945, people ranging from Plato to Hegel, in a sense, bear responsibility for providing the philosophy that the Nazis built upon. The PBS, public broadcasting system, is under fire, and there's nothing unconstitutional about that per se, but it's just an indication of the people who want to dominate American discourse to the exclusion of contrary opinions are doing. They are claiming that the PBS is, riddled with liberal left-wing points of view. They're constantly braying on about Bill Moyers. They must be suffering from some kind of serious amnesia because I thought that William F. Buckley was on PBS for at least 30 years, and last time I checked, he was the father of the American conservative movement. So Fox may not be fair and balanced, but PBS certainly was to some extent. Also today, the House of Representatives, just today, that's what I like about giving this talk. I always have some new material to draw upon. Just today, the House of Representatives passed their contribution to a constitutional amendment that would outlaw desecration of the American flag. I have to admit, when I first heard this, I almost had like an ironic mixed feeling. Well, at least they're talking about a constitutional amendment. At least they're showing that the Constitution has to be respected. In that sense, that's better than what the FCC has been doing, which is just stomping on the First Amendment without even acknowledging that that's a problem. But still in all, it shows the direction in which America is going. And now we have to hope that the Senate and the individual state legislatures don't ratify that amendment. Because if we do have a constitutional amendment that makes it illegal to burn or desecrate the flag, what's going to be next? Will it be illegal to criticize the flag? Will it be illegal to criticize the president? Will it be illegal to criticize the Republican Party? That's what's really bothering them. People don't like criticism. And they seem totally ignorant and or innocent of the Jeffersonian point of view and what Jefferson said in the 1800s. And there were severely critical things written about him in the press, but he understood that that's the price that had to be paid. So in the end, and this is the end of page 3, and then I'd be delighted to answer your questions. In the end, in the year 2005, we stand at another crucial juncture regarding the history of the United States, but also the history of the human species, and freedom of expression, and freedom of thought, and freedom of the press. And it's going to be a very tough battle. At least 50% of Americans don't want that freedom. A survey of high school students last year showed a majority of them didn't think the First Amendment was necessary and didn't see why newspapers had to be guaranteed that kind of freedom. So at this media ecology convention, and for the Media Ecology Association and the study of media ecology, which I think it's fair to say has not been a very political discipline. It's attempted, as Neil so aptly and eloquently said, it's attempted to understand the media. That's extremely important. But just as Dean Bush said on Wednesday when she offered a challenge, I'd like to offer this challenge to media ecologists. Become politically aware and active and begin to wield and use your media understanding to stand up to these political currents, which, if we're not careful, we won't have anything at all like the media that we had the past century. Thank you.